Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining a Resilient Fire podcast today. We're going to have a really good conversation with our guest. I'm so excited to have her here, Elaina Ramsey. Elaina is Executive Director of Faith Choice Ohio, which elevates the moral power of faith communities for abortion justice and reproductive freedom in Ohio and beyond. She has more than 15 years of campaign, advocacy, grassroots organizing, and editorial experience. And she loves listening to people's stories and engaging communities for social change. Elaina was recognized as a Coolidge Scholar by Auburn Theological Seminary and several other organizations for her work in religion and reproductive justice. And there's something really interesting about Elaina's background and experience. She is a former fundamentalist evangelical. Elaina practices compassionate care as a pro-faith, pro-family, and pro-choice Christian. She is currently pursuing ordination with the United Church of Christ. Welcome, Elaina.
Hey, Charity. Good to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you. Folks, I've known Elaina now for, how many years has it been? Roughly like 7 years, approximately, something like that.
That's about right. Oh, yeah.
I know, it feels like it's been forever, right? Definitely pre-COVID. And so I really want to have this conversation because a lot of my work has been at the center or centered repro, rights, health, and justice, and faith and religion. And I'm not as involved as I have been in the past, but I really believe it's just an amazing body of work with so much potential and so much impact, especially being in the South and knowing that religion influences everything and that we've got a few issues down here tied to religion. So we're just going to jump in. So Elaina, tell me a little bit about you all's work with Faith Choice Ohio.
Ooh, yeah. So Faith Choice Ohio, we've been around now, this is actually our 30th year. But I've been with the organization for 8 years now. And during that time, we've grown. We had a wonderful rebrand and changed our name. And so now we are Faith Choice Ohio. And this work, I never thought I would be doing this kind of work, but it has been the most life-giving, empowering work I've done personally and professionally. And I love everything that we do in Ohio and the Midwest to help people connect their faith to reproductive health, rights, and justice. And that's just a conversation I think worth having with as many people as possible, because like y'all in the South, like religion is important. Faith is important to people. The majority of people who have abortions and or just have reproductive experiences in faith communities need to be having these conversations. And yet so many don't talk about miscarriages and infertility and IVF and birth control and all these conversations that are just so core to our lives, including, our bodies and our sexuality. And so I love being able to do that with folks on a spiritual level, but also help them see how much of it connects to politics and how so many of our so-called elected leaders just want to control our bodies and the reproductive decisions that we're making. Faith Choice Ohio has been in this work to help elevate that moral conversation and empower people to take action for abortion access, but also reproductive freedom and justice at large. Yeah, I'm happy to dive in, talk a little bit more about our work, but that's just a brief intro about us. And so fun that I get to meet folks like you, Charity, to be able to talk about faith and repro, because it is a conversation that not enough people are having. Because, as you know, Lots of folks have a lot of mistrust. There's been so
Mhm.
much disinformation about religion, as particularly because so many of, the far right and the extremists have dominated the conversation, have been very public about how they practice their faith in very oppressive ways. And so we're here to
Right.
reclaim that conversation.
And I love that. I like the whole piece around reclaiming and presenting these sort of alternate messages and groundings and analyses around religion and reproductive health, rights, and justice. Me having worked with religious scholars in the past really opened up my views a lot. I am not a theologian or a religious scholar, but it was just incredibly empowering to hear, particularly from women of color, something different that makes you just feel empowered versus something that just makes you feel scared or oftentimes ashamed and just being silent. So I love that. And folks, I'm going to let you know, Elaina is the ED of Faith Choice Ohio, but she has her hands in all kinds of stuff. And pretty much, I would say, all the major efforts on a national level at the intersection of religion, faith, and repro. And so she's very well connected and informed. But yes, I think this is great. In the trauma piece too, around this also, like addressing that and giving that empowering message once again around this, and not just hellfire and brimstone. Um,
Amen.
I have a question around the types of religions you all are engaging, or folks who practice different religions. I know you all are really connected with the Christian churches and denomination and folks, but what does some of your other religious outreach look like?
Yeah, we are a multi-faith organization. Definitely, though, we lean into the Christian, Protestant, some evangelical spaces because, I mean, let's be honest, that's where the problem is, right?
Right,
Like
right.
all these problems that we're having, people legislating against our bodies, against queer and trans folks,
Mm-hmm.
are coming from Christian folks. And so, again, that's a big part of just reclaiming not just theology, but the practice of it, and helping people understand that, like, if your religion is hateful, then you may not be practicing it fully.
Right.
And so, yeah, while we do a lot of engagement and outreach in Christian spaces, we have many Jewish partners as well. We've got the Unitarian Universalists, some Catholic partners, and then just a handful of folks who, are Islamic, who are Buddhist. It's Ohio. It's predominantly white spaces, and so the religions are, of course, very
Right.
white in that regard, and have been colonized in so many ways. And so, yeah, we try to reach beyond the Christian centered ways of thinking, but also help people decolonize the way that they think about dominant Christian culture, which has driven so much of what is wrong with this country,
Right.
frankly. Especially now when we look at the wider landscape and how white Christian nationalism just pervades everything. Not just for our bodies, but all the way up to our institutions, the way that our elected leaders are trying to legislate morality through their religion, which, we live in a democracy, and I believe in a pluralistic society in which all people and all beliefs matter, and yet there's been a narrow worldview that's being shoved down people's throats. And
Right.
so I love the diversity of the work that we do to help remind people that, like, there's no just one way of being and believing, that there is room for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you brought me to my next question, which was around white supremacy. And that was something that I used to work on specifically, is the white nationalism, Christian nationalism, exceptionalism, white supremacy, all of that, and how so much of what we are taught and raised to believe within the Christian faith is really connected to that white supremacy. So I'm curious to know how that is received in different spaces, spaces of color versus white spaces, because I know I find when I talk to white folks sometimes, even if they're, progressive or whatever the term is, when you call white supremacy out, they get really uncomfortable, even if they agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Yes, ain't that the truth? Oh, it is. It is a lot of labor, as you know, as people of color, myself included, to be able to speak these truths. And yeah, some people really have a hard time hearing it, even those who, as you say, are the most progressive or leftists, still really struggle with how white supremacy is a part of everything, not just, our personal actions, but just also the ways that our cultures and our communities are shaped, and everything from decision making to the biases that we have towards others. And yeah, so it is an ongoing conversation. It's one that we bring up often into these spaces. Yeah, because we teach not just reproductive health and rights, but justice.
Right.
And that means we have to be talking about power, who holds it, who wields it, and how whiteness often gets in the way and tries to reign supreme over people's lives. So that is just something we negotiate daily to help people grow in their understanding that this country and this world is not made for and by white people. And yet that is often, as you know, the ways in which we try to legislate and try to build around a world in which whiteness reigns supreme. And that's just not the lived experiences of people of color, marginalized folks. And so, yeah, the conversations are very different when we are talking to more BIPOC communities about this stuff. So therein lies the challenge and the opportunity. Some days are easier than others, but I do find it's always rewarding when people get that light bulb, the aha moments of growth.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm here for. I've had to change my mind on a lot of things. I've had to deconstruct and decolonize my ways of thinking, even my own internalized racism. And so I try to extend that grace to others as well, because we all need it. And I believe in people being lifelong learners of all things.
And it's hard for folks of color to a lot of times to digest that as well. And when there's that realization that, oh, perhaps this is not healthy, or perhaps this is oppressive to someone or a group of folks, like with the LGBTQ plus community. So, it's definitely on both sides. I think that you can get that pushback, that discomfort, but as you said, there's challenges, but those challenges oftentimes can be opportunities. And especially when you, as you all do, embrace the RJ framework, and you're really able to take conversations out of the context of just abortion and legalities, but really talk about real issues and intersectional issues that impact particularly marginalized communities.
That's right. We're in a hard place right here in Ohio because so many people feel like the work is done. In 2023, we passed a ballot initiative to protect reproductive freedoms, reproductive health in Ohio. And then folks just kind of felt like, all right, it's one and done. And yet we work daily with folks who whose reality is not, where this is a finished conversation. Through our Practical Support Abortion Fund, we work with people who are navigating barriers to access. And so we're constantly helping people negotiate things like, language barriers and, transportation. Do they have childcare? Just basic things that often are not top of mind for people when they're just thinking about rights. They're thinking about health and access, but they're not thinking about like everyday folks and how hard it is to just make ends meet, to put food on the table, and how folks are negotiating that with their health care. And in the communities that they live in, where there aren't clinics available, there isn't gender affirming care available. They may be, undocumented, and the challenges of having to raise families in that environment, especially right now. All of that needs to be a part of this work. And, I've seen the movement make strides here and there. It gets better every now and then. It's a constant battle of helping remind people that, great, just because you may have secured some rights, if you're not thinking about everyone else and the ways in which they're able to access that, then it's not really meaningful. Like, that amendment to me just touched the surface of what needs to happen, of what victory and what winning looks like and success. And until people can access the care that they need and, not have to worry about working 2 to 3 jobs, and also, putting that money towards childcare and housing in this economy, then really not talking about the same thing. We're not talking about how we want to build a healthy and, a good society for families. We can't talk about caring about any of that if we're only so singularly focused on like abortions. So anyways, I could rant. I could preach all day about this. I know you know these things. So right now here in Ohio, it's just helping people really understand that, the struggle continues, and help them see that all of these justice issues are connected, from queer and trans liberation to disability justice to immigration. Right. And that has been a challenge, to keep people motivated and connected and understanding that all of these oppressions are intertwined, and that we should be caring, so we've had to just really pivot some of our work and help people understand that okay, the challenges and the attacks on immigrants and trans folks, are really attacks on their bodily autonomy, trying to separate families, especially queer families, immigrant families, and that is all tied to reproductive justice. So helping people understand that, maybe if abortion is their passion issue, that's one thing. But to understand that, if we're going to talk about reproductive justice and reproductive freedom, then we've got to think beyond ourselves and understand that that means we care about all bodies, and that means queer and trans bodies, immigrant bodies, disabled bodies, and their families, and keeping them together. And so just trying to help people understand that can be a challenge, especially in these times in which people are afraid, and some of them are not willing to take risks, but if not now, then when? And so we've had to really think through how to keep people engaged and motivated.
And what you're talking about also, which is a whole other conversation, but really talking about how do you sustain the work in the movement and keep it consistent, keep people engaged. That is a whole other thing. And people may have the best of intentions and I'm really fired up, and then, life. So it's all these other things as well. But even some of the people who are most impacted sometimes don't have, I call it, a luxury to be able to get out there and fight for some things, to just be able to hold to hold that. What are some of the wins? I know you are very proud of the Jubilee Fund. That is rocking and rolling, and you're doing some great things with that. But what are you all most proud of?
Yeah, you mentioned Jubilee Fund. We're definitely proud of that. Part of it is that I'm immensely proud of our team and the ways that we dream and conspire together. And the Jubilee Fund was one of those things that we said, we need an abortion fund in Ohio that is faith-based, faith-centered, that mobilizes people of faith to care about these issues in a tangible, practical way. And so we opened the Jubilee Fund in 2002, like weeks before the Dobbs decision dropped, gutting abortion access in Ohio and across the country. And it really was a place where faith communities could plug in and provide practical support to support abortion seekers and those experiencing just ongoing attacks on their bodily autonomy. And so that has been, continuing and continues to this day because, again, people have abortions every day and people have pregnancies and they need options. And so that is very much something that grounds us to know that, every day we're talking to patients who need access, who need care, who don't have clinics in their communities. I mean, 92% of the counties here in Ohio don't have an abortion clinic. So people are having to travel hours upon hours in state and or even out of state if they are beyond our 22-week gestational limit. So we love the reminder that, we've got to show up for one another, especially how important mutual aid is in community care. And that's really what the Jubilee Fund does. And it helps to mobilize faith communities who already do so much of that wraparound support. They're the ones, that show up with the potluck and the casserole and someone's hurting, they send them a card and so forth. And that is, the same ethos that we apply to the Jubilee Fund. And so people help out with transportation, they help out with childcare and making sure that people have lodging and food and language interpretation for their appointments. And I just love that beautiful, beautiful model of making sure that people are supported locally, but knowing that, it's hands-on, it's strangers, it's people who care about one another. And I think that's exactly how we're going to be able to get through these next 4 years and beyond, right?
Yeah,
we do. We've got to have an understanding that we are beholden to one another, that is deeper than transaction or obligation, but that we really, really are, created to be in community and to support one another. And so that's what the Jubilee Fund does. And that's, again, a reflection of our team and one of the things that we are certainly most proud of, and just continue to do that hard work.
And it is hard, but I am really impressed with what you all have been able to do in the whole community care model. I've felt this way for a long time, that that's the way that we should be going. And the intersectionality piece connects so well with the community care. And in this current climate, what I've been saying since last November, and especially January, is that, it is time for us to go within ourselves and within our families and communities and just sort of lock that down, lock it down and really focus on our resiliency and sustaining us. And the other noise and all the other stuff is going to be what it's going to be. But I really feel like this is an opportunity during a very uncertain and uncomfortable time.
That's right. And, I think that's what I love so much about both of our works. And we just feel such a kinship with you and RJRP, in that we know that you've got to go within to be able to then be able to care for others. Like we're
Right.
deep into those, like, personal practices, those, they can be spiritual, they can be divine, they can be whatever it is, but that helps ground you, to help you understand your own resiliency and your own values that you can then translate and share with others out in the world. And you've got to have that deep, for some people, it's a deep faith, it's a deep knowing of who you are to then be able to show up for others. And I just, really admire all the resources and the ways that you help people to understand themselves personally, because all of that, again, is connected to our communities as well.
Definitely. So I want to share with folks that I took one of you all's classes, and talking about resources, you all have a lot of really good resources, and I'm just so impressed. And I was like, let me go see, like, how many people does Elaina have on staff? Like, they're rocking and rolling. And what really caught my eye was the class around transformative justice. And I probably should be a little bit more grounded in that, I think, doing this work. But restorative and transformative justice is something that I definitely wanted to know more about. And so I took that class. And I just want to say, first of all, and I'm sitting here going through my notes because I made several of them. What I noticed, first of all, was the accessibility. And so I just really want to lift that up, because you all have, I guess, like a tiered fee, right? So it's accessible, and that's always important when you do this work, that people can access it. And that was really good. And then the other part of it is the facilitator, Kelly, was good.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel so heavy, right? It was, I could listen to her speak. I had the slides and I could download the slides. Then you had a couple additional resources, but it wasn't a long list of like 50 different things, like, oh, here's a book and here's a blog, or, something like that. Yeah. So I felt like it was easily digestible. And that was important also for me. And especially when you're busy, it didn't take up a lot of time. So these are things that I really appreciated about my experience with your materials and resources.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that feedback. So those trainings, we have 4 of them right now, and that's on our Faith for Repro Training Center. It's our online platform where, as you say, people can engage it on their own time and on their own terms, because it's all self-paced. Asynchronous learning. And we did that because we had all these trainings that were happening live or online or in person. And we wanted to be able to share them with folks outside of Ohio who couldn't make, here's the time where we need you to show up for this training. People can just access that on their own terms. And we have a very nominal fee structure where people can access it. And, for as little as $5 per training, and especially the self-managed abortion in good faith. We made that one free specifically because we're like, everyone needs to be able to access information about abortions for free. But the restorative transformative justice training that you're taking, Kelly is our self-described spiritual care queen. And she does. She keeps us really grounded and connected to our values. And so she is such a proponent of restorative and transformative justice and helping people dream and think about what is possible. Like, we know that times are hard. We know that oppression is real. And we're not going to negate that, but we also have got to learn how to practice moral imagination and transform these systems that we're living under. And so the punitive model that we see for justice, where we just try to lock people up and throw away the key, is one way of doing it. But as we're seeing, that's not really effective. And so it doesn't foster the healing. It doesn't give people the full sense of justice, where they really understand like the why and the repair and the accountability that needs to happen. And so, Kelly breaks it down and helps us reimagine the future that says that repair is possible, and it's not easy by any means at all. But we've got to do better than continually enacting trauma on one another and then disposing of people in our carceral system. And so we love that. We love the way that it applies to movement work as well. Like, you've got to be able to work through conflict and injustice, and you've got to repair that and be accountable to one another to still be in right relationship. And all of that, I think, is so essential to this work and transforming the way the world is into the way the world we want it, the way it ought to be. And we've got to have that kind of vision.
So you got to my next point, because looking at my notes, I wrote futurism.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really like this idea of focusing in this work, of focusing on what we want to see. And I think sometimes we think we're doing that. We think like, oh yeah, we're working towards this shared vision, and we've thought it out and we've seen it and so on and so forth. But a lot of times we haven't. And that's because we spend so much time beating back bullshit. That's what I say about our legislature here in Georgia. That's a whole nother topic, because we've got some really ugly things going on right now. Amen. But we always say it's hard for our more progressive community to push for things in a proactive way, because we spend so much time fighting and beating back the crap. And so we kind of define our wins around that. And so to really set the stage and a framework to say, really, let's think about a different future, and how can that be done systemically, right? Mm-hmm. And then to talk about the restorative and the transformative, also the sort of single or individual focus, I guess, versus more of a collective community focus. And like you said, the different levels of accountability and what that looks like. And I think that's really exciting. I think it's extremely challenging. But I think when we talk about the incarceration, so many people are touched by it, even if they don't realize or don't have a direct connection to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was really good. And so anything else you all do in that vein, I would definitely love to participate and to get that information. Yeah.
Just telling my team, I'm like, well, we want you on our Soul podcast to talk about your work.
I'm down.
Yes, let's do it.
So my last question around work directly is, what makes Faith Choice Ohio different from other organizations who do this work? And I don't mean this in, like a competitive, one's better than the other, but simply, what do you all think you've mastered, and really folks look to you all to bring to this work in Ohio? But even, as I said before, you all are very engaged nationally as well.
Yeah, people ask us this, and I'm like, there's no secret sauce or formula other than, right?
We just do the work.
Yeah, we do the work. Exactly. We really focus. We're really intentional and strategic. And part of that, I will say, is the makeup of our team. We've got now 6 of us total, but everyone's part-time, myself excluded. But we are all, we represent, various lived experiences. The majority of us are people of color. We are queer. We are young-ish, rural areas. So anyways, we represent a lot of the communities that don't often get represented. And we're able to help people understand what it means to be in these bodies and to have these experiences that are often vulnerable and marginalized. And that then makes for a different way of approaching the work. I mean, we don't just talk about legislation and elections, and as important as that is not how we get free.
Right.
Liberation will not be through legislation alone. It has to be through our communities. It has to be through our shared commitment and our values and the way we care for one another. And so we really try to do that work, and we do it also at the local level. I think that also makes a difference as a state-based organization, that we can be connected at the grassroots level, which is very different from a lot of national organizations whose only footprint is like in DC, and they only think about what's inside the Beltway and not like real people's lives and how these decisions are impacting people on a regular basis. And so I think that just helps us stay rooted and able to create accessible, meaningful programs that speak to people's lives and their needs.
Yeah, I see that, from you all's work, and then embracing the RJ framework too. I see you all doing that. I think there are a lot of groups who sometimes say, "Oh, yeah, we're embracing the framework and it's informing how we do things," but a lot of times that's not really the case. And so I really see you all embracing the framework, and so that's always good to see.
Thank you.
So I'm going to segue into a bit more personal waters, so to speak, just because, like the other fabulous women I'm talking to, just outside of your work, you all are interesting. You have a lot to offer and multi-talented and a range of experiences. So I just wanted to talk to you a little about your fundamental background and your evolution to this point and where you are right now. What was that like for you? And did you feel supported? And what was some of your biggest challenges?
Evolution is a good word for it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a journey. But no, evolution. I've had to really change and shift, my whole worldview and mindset. And that took a lot of internal work, but it was also, as with all things, it was a communal experience. I have been really graced by people who've journeyed with me and have had to be very patient about some of the really bigoted, awful things I used to believe and think and say, and question that with love and with integrity, and would help me rethink and relearn some things. And so that has been, I was in the folly of youth. I thought I knew everything. I was in college and I was just like, I got all the answers. I'm going to go save everyone, and everyone else is going to hell but me. That's really the way I looked at the world. And it wasn't until I think, I really encountered other people's stories, and I got to know my own stories and understand that I was causing harm to myself. That these theologies that I was subscribing to were harmful to me as a person of color, as a woman, that they were, teaching me to be submissive and to deny my own agency. And so much of that led to just me understanding, I've had to really process through a lot of life things. I'm a rape survivor, and that was one of the key things in my life that really shifted things for me, because I spent a long time blaming myself, and that was a product of all these toxic theologies that I had learned, where I thought it was my fault and I wasn't modest enough and so forth. And so because of that, it led me to this work where I'm like, I know what it's like to have my agency and my bodily autonomy stripped away. And I don't want that for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that led me to eventually going to seminary and really unraveling so much that I had internalized for myself and for others. The challenge was to own that about myself. And while I recognize that, I was part of the system, and in some ways, I didn't know any better, but I also did, I was complicit in it. And so when I eventually returned to Ohio, and I returned as a different person, literally a different person, and to take on this work, I did a bit of an apology tour, and that was really important to me, to go back to the people I had hurt and to explain to them, who I am now and why I was so sorry. Like, especially a lot of queer folks, that I had told them that they were going to hell, and to really repent. And I think that's, I'm a Christian. It's part of who I am. I think that's a part of learning and understanding, sin is not just something that sends you to hell, but it's what separates you from others. And I did not want to be separated from people that are now my queer and trans friends are such my biggest parts of my community. And I am just so sorry that, I subscribed to this theology that was so painful, so harmful to them, and that I was a part of that. So all that to say, that's why I fight today for, gender affirming care, for bodily autonomy, for my own agency, for the agency of others, because I know what it's like to especially have your bodies policed, which also relates to your sexuality and your orientation. And so all this work is full circle for me. It is part of the repentance and the making things right and repairing harm. And I'm thankful that, I had to go through those experiences because in some ways, it's made me a better advocate. I know when people are like, why are people so crazy and so terrible? And I'm like, I've been there. I know.
Why.
I know why.
Yeah.
I know, propaganda and all of that. And I also know that it's possible for people to change. And it takes a lot of grace. It takes patience. And so, and I know that's not everyone's labor to do, by all means. Never going to expect that for others. But I also, I'm much more patient with some of our movements that they're like, we need to just throw everything away. And I'm like, no, we got to build some bridges and help build those connections for people. I think a lot about, not to get too political, but like all the Trump voters this time around who are like, oh, I never thought it would happen to me. The leopard in my face. And how dare that happen? like
he actually told you,
right,
what he was going to do, but okay.
Exactly. Like, I'm an immigrant, I'm getting deported. Okay. And I'm just like, that could have been me by the grace of God, And I'm like, that could have been me and my immigrant family. And also, this is where I'm like, this is a time in which we don't say I told you so, but it's actually, okay, if we want to build our movements, we want to be stronger together, then we've got to be able to welcome those folks in, because they're the same ones who then continue in their very extremist, harmful politic. And some of it is because they've never known any better. And so we've got to be the bigger people to show them what is better and compassionate and true and liberating. And so I feel like that is my life's work now, is to help bring people along. And again, I know that's not everyone's calling, but it is mine because I've lived that
superpower. I mean, essentially, it's, I think, helpful to have that experience, and that you could take something like that and go through. It's not just the experience of having really been steeped in the fundamentalism, but then also the transformation and coming out of that and taking accountability and all of what goes along with that gives you such a unique perspective. I think that, has to be beneficial in this work. And, religion and spirituality and faith is so personal also, so to really be able to open yourself up and share that and share that personal side, I think is really, really amazing. So you mentioned, Elaina, immigrant family. So how has it informed you, being Filipina, your community, your culture? How has that informed you before, the old Elaina, and then informs you now? And that may look very different, but how has that played into and intersected with what you are doing in your path?
Yeah, definitely my background, second generation immigrant. My mom came here when she got married to my dad from the Philippines, and I definitely had to unlearn a lot of things, and that was also part of my spiritual journey. But with that was my racial identity, and how to unlearn the things that my mom had taught me, especially about shame and stigma. That's really deep in my culture. And also, of course, is really deep in others' life experience, but also when it comes to conversations here in the US about our bodies, our sexualities, are just so shame-based. And
Yeah.
so I had that cultural upbringing and those cultural scripts and messages that I had to unlearn and interrogate for myself. So it went hand in hand, like the modesty, fundamentalist culture, purity culture that I learned really dovetailed well with my Filipino upbringing of, just being quiet, being that model minority and not talking about hard things. And especially when it comes to mental health and sex, I had to, again, unlearn that. And so now I've come to a deeper sense of my own racial identity, my own spiritual journey and such, that helps me to embrace all of that together and understand that, like, okay, that was one. Whiteness and imperialism and all those things playing a part, colonizing the way that I saw myself, like that model minority myth and the shame and stigma that comes from that is, again, a product of just white supremacy, of just trying to keep Asian API people, silent and submissive. But it did nothing to serve myself and others. And so now I'm a part of a progressive Asian community in which together we're learning about what it means to belong and to develop an identity that is more holistic and more liberative. Mm-hmm. And so I've learned more about, instead of the harmful or oppressive things I've learned from my Filipino upbringing and white supremacy, I've learned about kapwa. And kapwa is this, it's a Filipino word, but it's essentially, it's about solidarity, and it is about belonging to one another. And that is part of my culture that I am really trying to embrace now and understand that, like, I've always been part of this collectivist identity of a people who cares about others. And so anyways, when we talk about shame and stigma, those are all individualized things. And yet we need to be transforming that into a deep caring and knowing of others, and of having just this understanding that we are deeply connected to one another and beholden to one another. And so kapwa and some other like spiritual lineages that I'm starting to learn about my Filipino background, where I'm like, my people were shamans and nativists, and they cared
It's
about
like reclaiming.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I want to lean into, not just this, Christian baggage that I
Right.
inherited, but no, the indigenous spirituality of the Filipino people were, again, steeped in kapwa and in nature and in healing and restoration. And I'm like,
Right.
that's the
It's so
legacy.
much
And
more, so much more.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'm learning to bring that into this work, and it's been very empowering and very healing.
Yes, I can imagine it would be very healing and just, exciting too, to really explore and open up and discover parts of your culture and background that maybe you didn't really know, or maybe you have a different analysis around it or what have
Mm-hmm.
you. And so in some ways, it's probably a lifelong journey as well.
Amen.
I know
Amen.
it's different dealing with family and close friends often when it comes to having different views. I imagine, working with whoever in the public around some of their conservative or fundamental views is different than maybe talking to family, friends, and community who are still associated with that. So is that still a big challenge for you, or have you found a way to say, okay, this is a space that works, agree to disagree, or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think part of the beauty of aging is that you care a lot less and you just say whatever you want. So the challenge has not been as deep for me. I think if I were younger, I cared a lot more about, what my parents and my family thought. And now I'm
Mhm.
just unapologetically myself. And I'm able to question my elders
Yeah.
in ways I'm sure they find disrespectful, but I don't just say, "Oh, okay, I'm supposed to have filial piety and not, rock the boat here." But I am able to just, ask them like, "Where did that message come from? Where that thinking, or why do you think that?" And explain to them where I'm coming from. And sometimes, they're able to hear that, and I'm
Mhm.
able to hear where they're coming from. Again, those religious messages, those cultural messages run deep.
Yeah.
So for others, they're not willing to question that. But there's always learning. There's always common ground to be had. I've never walked away just being like, oh, that was never worth my time or energy, especially when it comes to family, because I'm invested in, of
Yeah.
course, knowing them, knowing where I'm coming from, and for them to know me fully. And I mean, I know it. I'm the black sheep in my family in many ways, and I'm okay with that. And at the same time, I am that tita, that and aunt.
Right.
Really, it's auntie, it's tita, where people know like. Oh, the kids know they can come to me when my sisters say already. They're like, you, the nibblings, the nephews and nieces are going to come to you to talk about sex and if they want, birth control and if they need an abortion. And I'm like, I'm glad to play that role. And I want to teach you how to do that for yourself as well.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Um, I can understand that part about the black sheep and all of that, but as you were talking, what I was thinking to myself was, that's first and foremost honoring ourselves in spirit and the creator and the spirit and creator within ourselves by
Mm,
living authentically and being our authentic selves. To me, that's the honoring part, and
right.
so everything else is secondary to that. But oftentimes we can't get to that until we get older, because I agree. I think about like my 20s, even my 30s, and compared to now, and I'm just like, it's no way in the world I would do XYZ or deal with XYZ or take whatever crap.
That's right.
So yeah, age definitely I think plays a part as well. So one thing that you and I also connected on the past couple years, we've been through a lot, And so we both have been on a cancer journey. I started with my mom's journey, which I also call mine as well. And then 4 months after she transitioned, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had to, as a matter of fact, had my CTs last week and waiting on results and hoping everything is still good. But really how I even got here right now, like to this podcast, to the work and all these other things that I'm doing, directly relate to that experience and the expanding that I did around my faith and spirituality. And so, you too had your cancer journey and you are cancer free. Yay!
Yes.
What was that journey like in terms of your faith and did things contract or get deep or expanded or what are some of the things you encountered on your journey?
First, let's just celebrate that we are on this side of it.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Man, all of it. Ding, ding, ding.
Yes, ring that bell. Gosh, never thought in my life, and I'm sure you didn't either, that we would have cancer by this, early 40s. Like, what is this? And I definitely am still processing so much of it, since it wasn't until about 2 weeks ago that I got the all clear and finally was declared, no evidence of disease. And so I am still sitting with, what past year and a half has meant to me. But definitely there has been a deepening. I think it helps you take stock of what's your priorities. I've worked a lot less. I cared for myself more. But there was also a lot of grief. There's a lot of ambiguous loss that comes with, some dreams, some plans deferred. And you think about your mortality and what, how you're living your life. For a minute, I wasn't very plugged in spiritually because I was angry. Of course, I was questioning a lot of things. I've come now on this side of, I think, yes, I still identify as a Christian, but in many ways, I think I'm more agnostic, and I've expanded my understanding of God and theology and religion, and you don't need to just subscribe to one. But meaning and belief comes in many, many forms. And that has been what has carried me through, this really hard season of understanding that Christian faith offers some things, but is not all things. Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, I've learning to reclaim some of my indigenous spirituality and be more connected to nature, and how healing it is, how powerful our Creator is, and that I just can't find that kind of peace and healing through Christianity alone. And so, I think, like I said, I'm still exploring, I'm still trying to figure it out, but definitely it's new for me to claim that I think I'm more universalist, more agnostic in my worldview. And I know, a lot of my fundamentalist friends are just rolling their eyes at me and such, but that is my truth, and that's who I am, and that's how I know God and the divine, and I need that, and I want that for others, whatever it looks like, to feel whole and to feel seen and to create meaning. Get it where you can, because life is too short, as we know.
Right. Yeah. When you said grief, and my first guest on this podcast as a therapist, and grief is part of a series that we're doing because that's how we sort of connected on some things, was around grief. And We were just talking about how, like us, we got to the other side, we beat it back. And so you feel so humble and grateful and all the things, but there's still a grief somewhere in there. And it can be
yes.
around different things. And I think sometimes our communities and our religious beliefs sort of make you feel bad for that
Right.
oh, it's not that I'm not grateful, but I have to acknowledge this grief or the possibility that I lost, whether it's physical, whether it's around work,
Mm-hmm.
a relationship, or what have you, because it will come back at some point if it's not acknowledged or addressed. And so, I really resonated with that. And then I think about too, for me, it was even more, I'm always questioning. Anybody who knows me, everybody, all my husband, number one, but my friends and family, they're like, you ask a lot of questions. I'm like, yeah, I do.
Good.
But I, in some ways, became more sure, but also more questioning. And I don't know quite how to explain that, but I have really started connecting also more to nature, Elaina. So I took up gardening Mother's Day weekend, and my mom
Yes.
used to, and I'd help her a little bit now, wishing I had done more. And a friend of mine brought me a plant over, and I've been kind of wanting to do it, and for whatever reason, just hadn't done it. When I tell you Mother's Day weekend to today, I have been obsessed with the gardening and
Yes.
growing. I went in my backyard and took like photos and Googled all these weeds, and I was so excited because I'm like, most of these are edible and they're all medicinal and they're just growing in my backyard. So I went on this whole thing, but
Yes.
my uncle, when I told him about it, he said, you're channeling your mother. And I said,
Mm,
yeah, I know that. And I also feel much stronger about seeing spirit, God, creator in me and other living things and in my environment around me. And then it makes me feel more connected.
yeah.
And so that's definitely something that I am taking, from my journey around this.
So
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
It. you, you only know if you've been through something like this. So I hear you in all
Yeah.
of this. Like the grief is very, very real.
Yeah. Grief and
It's
anger,
so
like you
horrible.
said, just, and all of it is valid, and
Yeah.
it doesn't always last, but you've got to move through it,
Right.
and
Yep.
just, it does change you.
It does.
So I like to ask folks, Elaina, what's bringing you joy and or peace right now with everything going on, the news and all the craziness? How are you grounding yourself, self-care, all of those things that I put in that pot?
Mm.
Yeah, what's working for you these days?
Oof. Yeah, we all have to find our thing. And for
Right.
me, um, and a big part of this was finding this throughout my cancer. I had to figure out a way to move my body differently because that was
Mm,
also part of the grief, right? Like my body
yeah.
has changed and I have a lot more joint and muscle pain that they're still trying to figure out. So I had to give up Zumba and boxing, like
Mm-hmm.
really things that just gave me a lot of life. But I've discovered swimming. Discovered it like it's a
Oh,
new thing,
yeah.
but it's new to me. And
It's excellent.
and yeah, just to be in the water, to flow, to let it just hold you. I cry in the water. It has been such a gift for me to be uh, held by the water and to also move my body through it and have confidence in my body again, to feel like I didn't lose everything, that I've just had to, I've had to adapt and
Mm-hmm.
find a new way to live on. And so swimming has allowed me to still move my body, be me, but in a different way, because cancer changes you. And I think that's also what it means to live during these times as well, that whether we know it or not, like the pandemic and everything, you might be living through something, but when you get on the other side, you realize the impact of it on you. And now is the time to cultivate those practices, those things that not only carry you, but give you life, that give you hope, that give you a sense of self and meaning and purpose. And it can't just all be work. You can't find your hope and your everything in that alone, right? Like, we were not created to labor and toil, but we were created for joy, for peace, for rest. And I'm finding that more and more how essential it is. So I'm really glad you asked this, and it's so you to ask this, of course.
And I was telling somebody recently that I wish I had access to a pool, because I'm a water baby. Number one, I'm a Pisces.
Yes.
I was born on the coast in South Carolina, and I'm definitely a beach bum kind of chick, if I could have it my way. My parents were like that. So very connected to water. But I wasn't necessarily thinking about the swimming and the water and being held by the water. And so I love that, because it's so very true. And when I've tried to teach folks how to swim, I always say the water has you, and now it doesn't mean you can't drown, obviously, and so on and so forth, but you sort of relax into it and let the water hold and carry you. So I love that imagery. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
That's great. Elaina, I just really appreciate you, and thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any additional thoughts or comments or a call to action? We've always got, we're doing this, we're doing that. So anything else?
Oh, goodness. You're supposed to do your own plug, plug yourself, all that good stuff. First, I'll say for everyone else, just continue to ask those questions, to go deep, go local. I think more and more, we're not going to find the answers at a state house or in DC. We've got to be plugged in locally. And our world is not designed to do that, but it's so important. And I'll just say, fine, shameless plug. We did open a new store at Faith Choice, Ohio. And welcome people to check it out. It's our Faith for Repro store. You'll find it at faithchoiceohio.org. And if you want to take 15% off your first order, just put in the code grand opening at checkout. It's just one word, all caps, grand opening. But check it out if you want some merch to live out your values. We love pissing people off and telling them that abortion is sacred. Like, it is. So get over it.
Yeah. I had on a shirt yesterday, and I was in the front yard digging in the dirt, but it was I think it's from Urge, and it says, like, abortion bans are racist or something like that.
Yes.
And my husband, he's all 150% supportive of what I do, but he's he gets a little freaked out sometimes. So I'm out there in the front yard, and he's like, "Are you just out there with that shirt on?" And I'm like, yeah, and so I have several of these shirts, and, they get a lot of looks, and I'm just like, I dare you to say something. I dare you to say something.
That's right.
But I did get that email, so I'm glad you brought that up. So that's cool too. I love that, the merch store. So folks, check out faithchoiceohio.org, correct, Elaina?
Right. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to your staff, for the work that they do as well.
Thank you, friend. And for you, all that you do, and your wonderful husband. My goodness, you do.
I put in the work occasionally.
Partner goals. Aw.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, you take care.
You too. Love and light to you, friend.
Same to you.
Mm-hmm.